my studio. It's a beautiful, beautiful sunny autumn day out there. So I'm making the most of the good light to come down and do some filming and get on with our beautiful piece that is now looking like this. Thank you so much for staying with me on this course. It's been quite a process, I know, to get it to this point and never quite knowing what direction I'm going in. I applaud you for staying with me when I don't know what I'm doing. So what chance do you have, really? But I think what comes out of it from, you know, from a couple of boxes of fabric, different colours, and then you end up with all these little snippy bits in here, putting them together and creating this beautiful kind of harmonious, very simple, gentle piece here. I think I can see kind of where it might be going, but I'm just taking it one step at a time. It's a bit like life. We can't always see the end result, we can't always see what's really going to happen, and the more we try and get to that point where it's actually finished, which is what I would have done years ago. I have to say, back in the day, I would have had this thing done and dusted by now. I would have known before I started exactly what I was going to do, and that would have been it. There would have been no, I might have done other things spinning off from that, and I would have made a huge list probably of all the things that I wanted to do as a result of playing with this and creating this. Other things would have come to me to do, and that's why I always have a huge long list of things to do, but that puts me under such pressure, and now I don't have that pressure because I just work with what comes to me and I allow this thing to unfold. I allow life to unfold it for me, and I'm finding I'm personally living my life more and more that way. I kind of get up in the morning. I know I'm very privileged because I work for myself. I have that opportunity to choose what I do, but I try and work with my energy. I work with my energy and my flow, and you know, whether that's washing the dishes or doing hoovering in the house, I'm finding more and more that if I tune into what my body's feeling like doing and what I'm really feeling like doing, so it could be a weekend, you know, when I'm doing planning to do hoovering and stuff, I might make a plan and say, oh, I think this house really needs a good clean, but I might not feel like doing it at the weekend. So, you know, sometimes I just go for a walk instead, and that is really beneficial. So I think it's just about being flexible, and I think this whole making process for me has changed radically from being this almost like having an agenda and a list of things to achieve in order to create what I want to create. From the get-go, and now I just go, well, what shall we do today? How is this going to flow today? What, you know, already it's changed. I took the dark brown pieces off last week, which I thought were absolutely necessary, but perhaps it was necessary to put them in so I could see that it was necessary to take them out. I don't know. It was almost like part of a process there that said, no, this isn't what you want, take them out. But I put them in because that felt like the thing to do at the time, and obviously it changed. You know, change what I did. So I think really it would be nice to get on with this. Let's get some pinning done. Let's get on some free machine embroidery and let's pull it together, because I am quite keen to see how it's going to turn out, and I'm sure you are too. So I just want to say a big thank you. I've had so many more people subscribing lately, and it's just absolutely wonderful to have you all here. I'm kind of changing up what I'm doing a little bit. I'm trying to polish things up a little bit. Simplify them but make them look good, so that anything that I send out to anybody, I try and make it look as nice as I can, whether I'm sending out something from my Etsy shop or whether it's, you know, something I'm posting online. I actually had a few weeks off. I don't know if anybody noticed that I wasn't posting anything on social media these last few weeks. I just really didn't feel like doing it. In fact, I nearly deleted the accounts and thought, oh, that's it, I'm not doing any more of that. But it was a bit like the mountains. I took the mountains off and that changed this piece, and actually I've come back to Instagram and Facebook, which is where I do like to post photographs. I do like to share a little bit, and I feel as though that's kind of part of my creativity. So it's like I had a little sleepy patch, and I've come out of that sleepy patch, and now I'm just feeling much more, I feel rejuvenated actually. I feel ready to post a few more interesting pictures and things and just have a bit chat online. So again, it's about feeling what feels right for me to do in that moment. So let's get on, because I think the moment now is for pinning and stitching. So let me just show you what I've got here. Is I've cut a piece of stitch and tear or tear away stabilizer. I hope you can sort of see that. That's because this lot is really soft where I've just embellished it, and that will get chewed up by the machine and it'll lose its shape, which I don't want it to do. I want it to keep this nice long shape. So I'm actually just simply pinning this onto the back just to hold it in place roughly. And I don't know if you can see, look at the lovely sunshine that's coming through. I usually put the blinds down. I often put the blinds down if it's bright and sunny, just because it makes too much of a contrast, and then if the sun goes in, it just makes the light go a bit weird. But I just thought, you know what, let's just sit here and enjoy the sunshine. It's such a beautiful day. So just pin it all the way along, and then, because I just think actually, yes, something like, as I said, it's all about what feels right to do in the moment. I'm finding more and more, and I find that if I don't try and rush ahead and don't try and find the end of something before I'm actually at the end, I'm finding real moments of joy in my day these days. As I say, whether I'm doing the washing up, oops, that's a bit sticky uppy, isn't it? Whether I'm doing the washing up or the hoovering, I'm just appreciating everything more and more, I think, because I don't force myself to do anything. And if doing the washing up feels like just too much in that moment, I will go and I'll sit and I'll have 10 minutes off and I'll read a book, or sometimes I'll just sit on the sofa with my eyes shut. Do a bit of sort of meditating. I don't call it meditating, I just sit quietly with my eyes shut. Or sometimes I just sit and look out at the trees. If it's a daylight moment, I'll sit and look at the trees, and then I'll come back and I'll find that actually doing the washing up just becomes the easiest thing in the world. It's just amazing, really. More and more I'm doing this, and I have to say I highly recommend it. If you can let go of your agendas and let go of your to-do lists, there's still stuff to do, don't get me wrong. I still have things that I would like to get done, but I kind of do them when it feels much more nice to do them. So, right, I think it's time to do the stitching. So this is now time to choose some threads, and these are sort of the colours I've come up with. I had a lovely little bowl of really dark ones for the last piece. So what I've got for this one, I've got a different bowl. I've got this pretty little china bowl, and I'm just going to pop these in here. And don't they look lovely together? I don't know that I'll use them all, but they will certainly be, I think that's a bit dark actually. We'll see. We'll see, we'll put it in. We'll put it in and see what happens. And certainly I need a sort of a greyish colour as well, I think. So what a pretty little bowl of threads. Now, take them over to the sewing machine and just get on with some sewing, girl. That's enough procrastination for one morning. Okay, so here we go. Right, so I've just put a fairly neutral thread in, and you can see it, it's a sort of a mid-greyish taupey sort of colour. And I thought, well, that'll do for holding quite a lot of it down. Unfortunately, the bulb has just gone in my machine, so I'm doing it kind of in the semi-dark, so I apologise if that's going to make it tricky for you to see what I'm actually stitching. I need to get myself a new light bulb. So I'm just going to basically set off and start sewing and just get it all held in place with my free machine embroidery. I know you can't really see the stitching here. You'll have to just believe me, and when I'll turn it over I'll show you the back when we're finished. I'm just doing lots of wiggles and waggles, and it's just to hold it all in place, and I'm just going to keep adding layers of stitching to it, different colours, but I think if I do it with a fairly neutral colour to start with, that will help me get it in place. And I want to try and keep this sense of texture, but, you know, make sure it's all held in place. And you can do this if you want to jump from one bit to the next, you just do that. Simple as. Okay, so I'll just try and show you the whole piece. so you get a good idea. I shouldn't have made anything quite so long really, but you can see how I've done some very, very simple stitching really in various shades of colour, and I've kept it very simple and very light. I haven't done a lot of sort of heavy stitching. I haven't done, you know, loads and loads of it. If I show you on the back, see if I can show you the back, if you can see that, and there's areas where there actually isn't very much stitching at all, because I wanted those areas to stay proud. I didn't want everything like flattened down, so we've got flat areas, and we've got bumpy, lumpy, lovely textured areas, which is great. I really like the contrast. And what I've noticed, I have to say, thank you very much for all your comments about this dark fabric. It's really interesting. Since I've taken that off, and you all agreed with that, which I think is fascinating, it's just come into its own really. But what I did notice was this fabric actually has got the same, weirdly, it's like a shot fabric, so it's got these threads inside it, which is why it's such a gorgeous colour, even though it's dark. And it's very similar. It's not, you know, a million miles away from these sort of shades that I've got going on down here, which I find fascinating. So within this dark was the light. Isn't that interesting? Within that dark piece there was the light. And I also noticed that I actually had a bowl of dark fabrics from doing the very dark piece here, and I also have a lovely bowl of light fabrics. So we've got the light and the dark, and I'm noticing that more and more my work is about the light and the dark, or the, you know, one or the other, or putting the two together. And it's really interesting. I've all the work I did last year for my exhibition pieces was very much about the light and the dark, so it's very interesting. Anyway, it's interesting to me, and it may or may not be interesting to you, and that's fine. So what am I going to do with it now? That's the big question. And I was thinking, well, originally when I decided to do two pieces, when it shifted from 1 to 2, gosh, look at that, that's amazing. What a difference, isn't it? Wow, there's this really somber, dark piece down here, and then there's all this sort of life and texture going on up here. So, I'm thinking that actually what we're going to do is we're going to make it into one piece. 2 becomes 1. How is that for unity? We're going into unity here. We're pulling 2 pieces. Separation becomes unity. Isn't that interesting? There we go. So I think I'm going to be turning these edges in and attaching it somehow to the back here. And that's going to be my next little challenge. Of course, the two sizes will not be exactly the same. If I turn it over, we can see it's not far off. It's not too bad. There's a little bit of a wobbly stuff going on over here, but I'm hoping that if I turn the edges in, we'll be able to put it together and it will become one single piece. So that's my challenge. I will have a go at doing that now. I may do some of it off camera and show you how I pin it together, because I think I need to go off and have a little consideration about how exactly I'm going to stitch it, how I'm going to attach it, whether I'm going to do stitching through this top surface that will go onto the back of here. I'm just not sure about that yet, whether I do some stitching or a lot of stitching. I don't want to do a lot of stitching actually, no, not at all. It's too thick to use an adhesive, I think. I guess you could PVA it together. I guess you could glue the whole thing together, but I don't feel that's the thing to do. It's so beautiful and gentle. I feel I want to carry on with some of the stitching. So I will show you that when I've got to that stage. So I'll show you this. What I've done is I've tucked all the edges in underneath. So it looks like that on the back. And I very carefully pinned it, but I've left the bottom edge open. And if I just show you this other end, it's so long now, it's like a snake. I'm leaving this end open as well, so that when I stitch, I'm going to stitch from this end and I'm going to stitch along and down, and as I get down to the bottom, then I'll know where everything's in the right place, if you know what I mean. I'll know everything's in the right place, and then I'll be able to tuck these bottom edges in as well. And I'm allowing for the fabric just to move, because you know how fabric does. I've already had to do a little bit of fudging down here because it didn't quite go together in the right place. So we will just, that's the beauty of fabric, isn't it? You can fudge your fabric, and that's what I love about it. I would be no good as a carpenter because once you've sawn the bit of wood, you've sawn the bit of wood, whereas with fabric, it is very forgiving and you can come back to it again and again and do different things with it, which is what I love. So I'm going to take this over to my sewing machine and somehow attach the front to the back, and I'll let you see it when it's all done. Isn't that exciting? Okay, so here we go. This is it. It is done. I'll just try and kind of show you it all, just very slowly and gently. You get a feeling for it goes on and on and on. I've never done such a long thin piece. Actually, that's not quite true, but I haven't done a horizontally long thin piece for a while. So what do I want to say here? Well, first and foremost, what I did was I actually hand stitched this in the end. I started to machine stitch it down along here, and I was struggling to get a good tension, so I was getting the lighter coloured thread I was using here and it was coming over onto the other side, and I really didn't feel that was the right thing at all. I even tried another machine and it was still doing the same thing, and I just thought, no, I think I'm meant to hand stitch it. And I realised that actually that was much better. Machine stitching it would have changed the integrity of this surface. It wouldn't look like it does now. It would have altered it. It would have scrunched it and punched, you know, sort of pinched it together in different places, which would have been fine, but it would have changed what I've got here. So I've actually turned the edges in and hand stitched it all around with a bit of like, you know, little ladder stitch or whatever it's called. So this is it finished, and I'm really quite chuffed with it. I love the contrast between the very dark brown and the colours I've got going on here. I'm loving the textures, and what I'm going to show you is I'm just going to take it away for a moment. So what I've done is I've rolled it up because I feel as though it's meant to be a spiral. I'm just going to show you like this, and what I'm just letting it do is I'm just letting it sort of find its own place there. I think every time I kind of roll it up, I'm just going to cut this thread off. I think every time I roll it up, I think it's going to create a different sort of a spiral. So you can sort of see it there, like it's like a cylinder, but it's a spiral. So I feel as though it's meant to be 3D. It's not meant to be flat on the wall. It's meant to be a 3D piece because you get this. Look at this. You get this sense. It's very difficult. It's very difficult to film this bit to try and show you. So you can see it's a spiral, and it obviously each time I roll it up it'll be different, but I love this sense of this darkness against the light depending on where you're sitting at it and viewing it, and obviously if you're doing it from the side you will get, you know, the beautiful textures being seen. So it's very earthy, it's very spirally, it's very simple, but I love that it's kind of 3D. So the spiral shape in sort of old traditions and mythologies and is a symbol, I believe, of the earth. My daughter actually said something about it the other day, and I thought that was what this was about. It's about a symbol for the earth. I think this could be, it's sort of rocks or lichens or, you know, something like that going on there, and then there's this really dark, and it's the light and the dark and the earth, and as I say, this beautiful spiral shape. This is what we've ended up with. So what a journey. What a journey it's been. It's been really interesting, and I'm so grateful that you've come along on it with me. And here's the final result. I'll be very interested to hear what you've got to say about what you think about it and whether it's gone where you thought it might go, because really it's been a mystery all the way along. We obviously all felt that the brown fabric wasn't the right thing for that side, but obviously it's the contrast with that, and that is just so nice because that's so simple and plain, and that's so textured, and although it's very subtle colours, it's a very subtle colour palette, it's a very limited colour palette if you like. Although I used quite a few different fabrics, I used the limitation, and I do think that limiting what you have, what you're using, to some extent brings out a greater creativity. I think it's Sue Stone. I don't know how many of you know Sue Stone's work. She's a very famous textile artist who works with hand stitching she does a lot of stuff about her family and her family history, and she always puts a fish in part of her whatever she makes. But she talks, I did a course of hers online a year or two back. It was just a free one on hand stitching, but it was more to do with how you work with your resources, how you work with your materials. And she talked about how through limiting what you do, limiting your colour palette or limiting the shape or some kind of limitation brings greater creativity. And I do think that's true. I do feel that's true, especially this piece. It's been really fun to do and I've absolutely loved it. And hand stitching it was a surprise to me, but that was very pleasant to do. I just sat and hand stitched it together, and it allowed it to keep the shape that it had already made. I wasn't trying to control it any further, you know. The whole thing's been out of my control, really. So there we go, the end of another piece. I've no idea what's going to happen next week. Obviously we'll be into December. Winter's here. The colours have gone from the trees now. We're into winter. It's a new phase, I think. So we'll just see what happens next week. Do show up if you'd like to come and join me on the next, whatever the next is going to be. And thank you so much again for being here. Thank you for following along and giving me your comments is wonderful. It's lovely to connect with you. And I just wish you a very peaceful and creative week wherever you are and what you're doing. And I'll see you again hopefully next week in my studio. Bye for now.